Hi, everyone. This is Rico Figliolini, host of Peachtree Corners Life, podcast here in the city of Peachtree Corners in the county Gwinnett, just north of Atlanta. So I want to welcome you all for visiting with us today. We have a first-time author, Jill Tew, who's visiting with us, who lives here in Peachtree Corners, actually, as well.
Mhm.
Hey, Jill. Thanks
Hi,
for
thanks for having me. Yeah, thank you.
no, this is great. I mean, I love the idea of being an author myself, and I'm sure I have a book in me somewhere. But it's just
Yeah,
I can appreciate the endeavors of a first-time writer and author doing this.
yeah,
Um,
thank
yours is actually called The Dividing Sky,
you.
and is available on Penguin
Mhm.
Publishing, their website, and anywhere else that you can find a book on,
Anywhere
I
books are
believe.
sold, yeah, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I'll always shout out local indie bookstores. If it's not on the shelf, you can always make a request.
Excellent. So you were born in Georgia.
Hmm.
You went away for college. You ended up in Denver for a few years, and then you came
Hmm.
back to Georgia.
Hmm.
Um, Tell us a little bit about yourself. Who you are and where you've been in life.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up not far from here in like the Dunwoody, Sandy Springs area.
Mhm.
When I was growing up, it was Dunwoody, and then they incorporated, and so that changed.
Right.
Yeah, I grew up. I always loved writing and storytelling, and went away for college to do something more practical. I thought that was kind of what I was supposed to do. So
Mhm.
I went away to school in Philadelphia at an undergraduate business degree,
Right.
and did that, and was convinced that that was what I was going to do. I was going to go be an international businesswoman, and I was on the right track. I graduated. I did pretty well in school. I got a very sort of like prestigious corporate job out of school. I was a management consultant, so I was working
Okay.
in New York, advising major corporations. Um, and yeah, after that, I decided that maybe the corporate environment wasn't quite for me, but I still loved business and I loved solving problems that way. And so I ended up moving out to Denver and worked at a startup for another couple of years.
Oh,
That
wow.
startup ended up getting acquired by Comcast, and it was kind of a really cool process to be a part of from start to finish. Um, and that was around the time that I realized that I still had this like creative bug in me
Mhm.
from when I was younger, and I began to pursue writing as a hobby.
Okay.
And then a few years later, as things kind of shifted and the pandemic happened, and I was growing in my craft, then
Mhm.
it shifted from being, less of a hobby to more of, a full kind of wholehearted pursuit. And now it's a career.
Cool. What did when you were younger, let's say, I don't know, growing up, being a tween and stuff,
Mhm.
what was your, did you have any, did you see yourself being creative at that point? What transpired even at that age? Because usually it
It,
seems to start young.
yeah, totally. So it's funny, I never had any like visual art ability. So I never thought of myself as like a creative person because I was like, oh, I
Mhm.
can't paint or draw for beans. But I loved wordplay. And so I loved like making things rhyme and making up funny like poems and like
Mhm.
parodies of songs. Um, my favorite book when I was growing up was actually my rhyming dictionary because I would use it to just like make up
Okay.
funny stories and poems and stuff. I loved books. I loved, I think, storytelling in all of its forms. So my favorite at that point ended up being musicals. So I, again, kind of loved musicals for
Okay.
the storytelling ability. And I would find myself, watching, science fiction movies or book or shows, excuse me. Or when I was a little bit older, the Lord of the Rings trilogy came out.
Wow.
And I
Okay.
would just like think about these worlds and thinking about these adventures and, kind of come up with some of my own. I never wrote any fan fiction, but I read it heavily.
Okay. Wow.
And I just loved, kind of imagining the different places that these stories could take me. And looking back now, it all kind of clicks, and I see, where that spark kind of started. I loved writing stories and um, creative writing in school.
Mhm.
But when I pivoted to that kind of more pragmatic and practical approach, I
Right.
should have known that eventually I was going to end up circling back.
That's funny. So was science fiction fantasy, was that area mainly your interest?
Yeah, mainly. I grew up, reading Animorphs. That was probably my first like science
Okay.
fiction love as a kid. I
Mhm.
watched this show that not everyone remembers, but if you know, you know. There was a show that ran in like the late '90s, early 2000s called Farscape. And it
Yes.
was like, yeah, like yeah. So
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
Jim Henson Studios, like Muppets in space, but for like adults, like, you know,
Yes.
and just like the best like found family space opera of these like kooky alien characters coming together. I imprinted really hard on that show, actually. And I feel like that was kind of where I got the bug.
Okay, cool. You listen, people get it from different places, and
Yeah.
depending on your age, it just, I mean, it goes. I mean, my kids are voracious readers, and
Hmm.
they're into fancy sci-fi as well.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings was like a 13-year-old kid reading it.
Yeah.
Um, it's a dense piece of work also,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's,
Absolutely.
but I could see that. So with with the work you've done, getting into it as a hobby, how'd you get into it as a hobby? What were you doing as far as writing profiles, short stories, trying to pull together a novel idea? How'd that work?
Yeah. Yeah. It's really funny. I have some friends who kind of started writing with short stories. I have a lot of friends actually that feel like they're either good at short stories or novels, and like very few can really do both because they're very
Mhm.
different kind of media, like very
Right.
different formats.
Sure.
So for me, when I thought about a story, when my first story came to me, it really was this kind of bigger story that needed kind of like a full length novel. I was at the startup job on
Mhm.
the verge of burnout, and some coworkers thought that we should go see a movie after work. And so we went to the theater, and it was Divergent. It was that movie that
Oh,
came out
sure.
probably a decade ago.
Yep.
And walking home from the theater, I remember like that spark like reigniting in me, and me saying like, oh my gosh, like I've been missing this. Like this is what I want to do. I don't want to
Mhm.
make spreadsheets for the rest of my life. I want to tell stories. And I went home, and instead of like working on work that night, I started like plotting out this novel that I had in my head. This idea for like a parallel universes like sci-fi story. And
Mhm.
7 years later, that story got me my agent, and then we went on submission, and which means like you take the story to publishers and see if they want it.
Yeah.
That book did not sell, but while it was out to editors, I ended up writing the book that became my debut, The Dividing Sky. So yeah, that was kind of the beginning of the journey, was seeing Divergent and remembering that like part of who I was.
Yeah. Divergent. That was a YA novel that movie was based on.
Hmm.
A trilogy, I think, even because
Yeah,
they came out with some more stories.
yeah,
Yeah, I love the process of writing, right? The whole idea of doing it, and I've read enough and listened to enough podcasts about writing, the craft, like you
yeah,
said, because it is
yeah,
a craft, right? You
yeah.
have to. It's an artisan craft almost in some ways, um, but putting things together. Usually, most authors that I've heard about or read about
Yeah.
say that first book is usually that exercise of
Oh yeah.
writing, but
Oh
it's
yeah.
not the book that ever gets published.
Hmm.
It's always the second or third book that might get you there. So is this book a duology, a trilogy, or is it a one-off book that you
Yeah,
have?
it's right now it's a standalone. I
Okay.
think so. Actually, I should say that next fall, actually, I'm publishing with Penguin Random House again, a book that you could think of as like a companion novel. So
Okay.
it's another kind of dystopian romance. It's about 100 years before the events of this book, so it kind of sets up how we get here.
Oh,
But you can read them in either order, honestly. Um,
okay.
I have some I readers have been clamoring for a sequel already for The Dividing Sky. And so I am putting some thoughts together about what I want to pitch to my editors. I It definitely has it's not a cliffhanger, but it leaves some questions open ended at the end. There's room
Mhm.
for more, and so I've been thinking about where else the story might go.
Yeah, no, I could tell. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but just the synopsis of
Hmm.
what the story is about
Yeah.
takes place in 2364. It's an
Hmm.
18-year-old Liv Newman. Interesting storyline about
Hmm.
what she does,
Yeah.
and that the rookie police force person, I
Hmm.
guess,
Hmm.
Adrian Brow,
Hmm.
that follows her and finds her, and
Exactly.
she's lost all her memory, even though memories were
Exactly.
part of her job. So, I mean,
Yep.
I think it's such a great premise and I can see how it could go further.
Yeah.
Um, you've gotten a lot of good reviews, it seems. Kirkus Reviews called your debut a gutsy
Hmm.
novel.
Hmm.
Um, you've had other reviews in there and your comparisons even to Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower,
Yeah.
right? How does it feel to be talked about like that? To get those reviews after
Yeah,
so many
it's
years of
it's
writing.
it's a lot. I mean, when I finished it and we were kind of wrapping up the editing process, I knew it was something special. but you never know, I think, a lot of the power of those reviews comes in like who they assign to read it. And all you
Hmm.
can do as a reader, or as an author, honestly, is like hope your book finds its people, like at every level, like even
Right.
in, bookstores. And
Sure.
so when I saw those star reviews, my first thought was like, oh my gosh, like this book might have a shot at like finding its people. And I mean, like any author, I think would like dream of being compared to Octavia Butler. I feel like I don't want the book to be like overhyped, but it's funny. Like, I mean, I love Parable of the Sower. I love that book, and Octavia Butler, her writing was brilliant. I think when I reread Octavia or the Parable of the Sower this past year, I was reminded of how much of that story kind of seeped into my like authorial DNA. In that book, the main character has this sort of like, you could call it a gift or a curse or just ability to feel like the physical things that others feel. Like if somebody gets punched in the face, like she feels that pain. And this idea of like a character like having empathy for like extreme like speculative, like couldn't possibly be real, like empathy for others in that way has seeped into my DNA for sure. I think, Liv in The Dividing Sky, she's what we call an emo proxy, meaning that her job is actually to read books, watch movies, look at blades of grass blowing in the wind or sunsets, and have emotional experiences about those things, and then sell those emotional experiences, those emotional memories to wealthy clients who are too busy working to live life for themselves. And so this idea of like transferring emotions, of like channeling an emotion so that someone else can experience it, I feel like is tangential to that ability in Parable of the Sower in a lot of ways.
I love that idea. I mean, the fact that we look at COVID, we look at the sense of loss of personal connections with people, and eventually losing. I could see that. It's a sad world, almost a dystopian world, where you literally have to work through other people's emotions, which is really what we do with social media, right? When we scroll through TikTok for about 30 minutes, we're living through other people's lives.
Yeah.
It's not that much different. So is there, and as every book always says, none of this is based on real events or real characters or real people. But, an author writes from what they know a bit, right? Is there a particular part that was difficult to write, or a particular part that you felt more deeply about in this book?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think there's the world that the book starts off in is called the Metro, and it's sort of this like hyper-capitalist world where everything is hinged around productivity. And so you're only valuable insofar as you can earn money for this mega corporation that we call Life Corp in the book. And that's why everyone is so, focused on working, is because like that's how you get not only money, but your productivity score dictates, where you can live, what you can do, kind of just like the confines of your life. And so like, of course, you're going to outsource reading books or childcare or repair work or like dates with your wife to like proxies who will go and handle that for you. Now Liv and Adrian end up discovering this other community outside of the borders of the Metro called the Outerlands, and there are people out there who have been kind of vilified. But the closer they get to this community, the more they realize that they have a very different way of living that feels more connected and feels more like in harmony and is slower paced and, appreciates the value of human life, not for being productive, but just for being intrinsically valuable. And that was hard. I mean, I did some thinking about what I wanted that world to look like, because, I think as an author, like you're going to be depicting a society that is like, in some ways kind of what you're saying, what we should like swing closer towards or keep in mind, something that's supposed to show, what could be possible. And you have to like take that responsibility really seriously. So I thought a lot about the elements I wanted to highlight and, what I wanted to kind of telegraph as, like a way of life that is, maybe more in balance.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're not too far off with the, with what you were saying before about how work or credits may affect your life, because I mean China does that, right? So
the social credits work exactly.
Right, and we're not that far from that. I mean, we're stepping towards it a little bit, because even credit ratings. It used to be that apartment rent wasn't counted in that. Now it is. Utilities and the use of utilities is being counted in that. It wasn't before. So I don't think we're too far from that social credit type of
I agree.
deal. Yeah. So, and you do take responsibility as an author to be able to I mean, as a reader, I take responsibility of what I want, what I
Hmm.
like.
Hmm.
Um, so it's a two-way thing, two-way street,
Hmm.
right? To a degree like that.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but I like where you're going with that. World building is a very difficult thing
It's
to
hard.
do.
It's real hard. Yeah.
Uh, and when you do it well, I think people realize that uh, without even putting too much thought into it. They all of a
Hmm.
sudden realize they're in it and they like it.
Yeah.
Bit like Blade Runner. But
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think, all of those stories, I think it's funny as a sci-fi author and like
mhm,
dystopian author, especially, like you just realize you've been like swimming in this like ether and like all these
mhm,
ideas and, there's like androids in my book, like all these things have just kind of like seeped into like the compost pile that you're using to grow your story. So
yeah,
yeah.
definitely for sure. So
Yeah.
where do you find? You mentioned like movies, a couple of movies and stuff, and obviously some books. Are there other books of sci-fi or movies or shows besides Farscape and some of the ones you've mentioned already that
Yeah.
you take inspiration from?
Yeah, definitely those. I mean, I haven't really I haven't sold a like book in space yet, but like I love
Hmm.
Battlestar Galactica.
Oh
That's kind
wow.
of like a
Okay.
classic space,
Yeah,
space show.
for sure.
What was I going to say? Oh, I was just talking to somebody in an interview the other day about when I was younger. There were these two movies that came out back to back that were both about like uh like androids that like kind of bordered on being human. So one was like
Hmm.
AI, the Haley Joel Osment movie, where he was like a little
Okay.
boy, almost like a
Yes.
Pinocchio metaphor. And
Right.
then
Right.
the other one was
Then
Bicentennial Man with Robin Williams,
yes.
where he like lives over like 200 years. And I think those books, I mean, the movies came out like back to back, and I just feel like there was a moment there where everyone was kind of thinking about like technology and humanity and like where do you
Hmm.
draw the line. And I think like I always wrestle with those ideas. The android character in Dividing Sky, Nas, is Adrian's like partner on the force. They're like buddied up, and he's like he's got a heart of gold, right? A heart of like chrome and gold, I guess.
Yeah.
But he, for being, a robot, essentially, like he cares a lot about his partner. And I wanted to
Yeah.
kind of subvert the idea of an android being clinical and like hard and cold. Um, and have one whose like prime directive really was like the care of his partner.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then there's a book that is a little bit more recent. It's another like
Hmm.
YA sci-fi book, a trilogy actually, called The Illuminae Files. So if anyone's listening and like has a young reader in your life that likes
Yeah.
science fiction, this book is fantastic. It's like a mixed media format. So instead of just like prose on the page, it's told
Mhm.
through like chat transcripts and
Hmm.
like security camera footage and like all this really cool like artifacts. It's a really fun read and also great on audiobook. So I would highly recommend that one as well.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, I haven't heard about that one yet.
Yeah.
So I guess trending today. I mean, you see. I mean, my kids are into YA novels too, or at
Mhm.
least they were in YA novels. They're into young adult novels maybe
Yeah.
right now.
Mhm.
And so there's trends out there, right? Different ways of writing. I mean,
Yeah.
um, like you said, I mean, it could be multimedia, it could be transcripts, could be just
Yeah.
different ways of doing it. Do you
Yeah.
find, are there is there anything out there that's trending that you think would work for you, even for
I
your
would
type of
love to
writing?
do. I like it's my dream to someday do like a full mixed media, like mixed format book. Like that'd be awesome. There are a few of those in Dividing Site. We have some like police reports. There's some doodles in there that are really cute.
Mhm.
We have like a scientific study abstract and a job description actually opens up the book. So there's like
Ah,
some fun little things we did in there from a design perspective to kind of make the
okay.
world feel more fleshed out.
All right.
But I would love to be able to play around with different mixed media formats because it's almost like a puzzle coming together, even more than like a novel already is.
Sure.
It's like thinking about what elements you pull from like the real world that you've created to
Uh-huh.
give a full picture of the story. So I think that's really cool.
I'm curious. Your book is probably available as an Audible or no?
Yeah. Oh, the audiobook is fantastic. So we have two amazing voices because the story is dual POV. So
Hmm.
it's Liv's perspective and Adrian's perspective.
Okay.
And so we have two narrators, which is great. So Kaya Freites does Liv's voice, and she is like a well-known like anime voice actress. She does a bunch of audiobooks. She just did the voice of Violet from Fourth Wing on the like full cast edition of the audiobook. So she's amazing. Um, And then Junior Nyong'o did Adrian's voice, and he's a fantastic actor in his own right. He's done a few audiobooks as well, and I think some things for the stage. He's also Lupita Nyong'o's little brother, which is really cute, cool too. So they both did a fantastic job. I'm a big like audiobook. I have like a high standard for audiobooks, and so I was like, okay, like I can't get just anybody, but I'm so pleased with how it turned out.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that. When I go on my 2-3 mile walks, I always listen to a novel or something. And
Yeah,
if I
exactly.
hear a really good performance or
Mhm,
voice of a
mhm.
story, I always look for what other stories they've read.
Yes,
Just because
exactly.
right? Because I mean, just you can have a really bad reader or performer,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it
ruin a
won't.
great book. Absolutely.
Yes, yes.
That's
So,
happened to me, unfortunately, a few times when
yeah,
I've listened. I'm
yeah,
just like, ugh, yeah.
yeah. Shame on that, but it goes that way sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, so you've gone through the process of writing your book, publishing it. I'm sure it took a little time to, like you said, it took 7 years to get an agent, or
Hmm.
you wrote the book for 7 years, but your
Hmm.
first book,
Yeah.
you got an agent. Were you surprised about the process of actually the behind the scenes process of what it takes to
Yeah.
get the book published?
Yeah, so the process of going on submission, I think I was more straightforward. It's basically like getting an agent, but like all over again. So,
Mm,
you send the manuscript out to editors. Your agent ideally has relationships with different editors and publishing houses, and in science fiction and speculative work, especially, it just takes a long time because editors are also editing books they've already acquired. So they're editing those
right.
things. They're reading a bunch of submissions every day, every week. So the time it took, like that was kind of expected for me. The Dividing
Mhm.
Sky actually sold in like 5 or 6 weeks, which was pretty fast.
Wow,
And that was
that
that
is
was
fast.
amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so after that, I think, I knew that it would take about 18 months to 2 years for like the whole, like for the book to come out after that, which is about right. So we sold it in October
Mhm.
2022. It just came out, so that's about right. And
Wow.
over that time period, yeah, you're editing, more
Yeah.
at the kind of high level story structure level. And then you go into line edits. So that's like at the prose level. And then you get to copy edits, which is like typos. So all of that takes, months and months and months. I think what might have been surprising to me is that, a year before the book even comes out, that's when like marketing and sales and like cover
Mm,
conversations really kick off. And so, you might be working with your editor for a year before that, but it's like that 1 year timeline like starts like
mhm.
now all of a sudden it's a real thing for like everybody else at the publisher. So that part's always really exciting. So now we're going through that process now for my next YA book. So that's really cool.
Gotcha. Okay. And publishing has changed, right? So, I mean, you have Amazon selling books, you have Audible
Hmm.
selling books on credit. So
Hmm.
authors aren't making the millions that they used to make before, let's say. And it was definitely an exclusive club to some degree, right?
Hmm.
Where you can make at least a full-time living,
Hmm. Yeah.
between a book and then talking tours and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, did you find anything about that was surprising?
Yeah, I don't have much to compare to because I'm an author now, but from what
Yeah.
I gather, I think the biggest thing that's changed is that people's attention is just split in so many different ways, and that has
Yeah.
upstream effects, right? So, people don't read the way that they used to. We have so many different things vying for our attention between all the different streaming services and social media and
Right.
all the other forms of media out there, video games, right? And so
Yeah.
I think authors are not, one of only a handful of different forms of entertainment anymore. There's so much more out there.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I think it's harder. I think publishing houses definitely feel this, both because, the big five publishing houses that they have their own like traditional way of doing things that now may
Mhm.
not be as effective. And
Right.
because new players are entering the fray, like TikTok has their own publishing house now called Bindery. And Bindery partners with
Mm.
with like TikTok influencers
Mhm.
to like who become editors and like kind of curate their own stable of authors
Hmm.
and then promote them through going viral on TikTok, right? And
That's
so
amazing.
there's all, and it's working really well. I mean, I have good friends that
Yeah.
have bindery
Yeah.
deals and they're being treated very well, and I think for authors it's a totally viable path. So yeah, it's just fascinating to see. And then also even downstream you have like book boxes. So there are these companies that will create these beautiful like exclusive editions of books and kind of
Mhm.
spray the edges and maybe redo the cover and put some illustrations
Seen
inside.
that. Yeah.
And now they have their own publishing houses as well. So they've spent years getting to know what readers want really, really well. And now they're like, great, like we can just go buy that. We don't have to pay the publisher to acquire the licenses for these books. We'll just edit and like have our own authors. And so I think from all these different angles, publishers are feeling this push of like, okay, how do we get closer to readers, but also explore these new channels of marketing, right? I think it's kind of a free-for-all right now. And I think authors can just stay agile and nimble and kind of react to what the market's doing and just try to seize opportunity where it comes, honestly.
Yeah, and hopefully that, maybe one of these becomes a Netflix series or movie or something, right? I mean, with all the streaming services looking for content and stuff, it's just unbelievable. And with ChatGPT, I have a few friends that think they're authors now because they can just prompt ChatGPT to write a piece for them. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But it's not that easy, right?
No, it's not. And like if you don't enjoy the like puzzle and like mental exercise that is writing, like maybe being an author is not for you. Like you should enjoy it's hard, but you should enjoy the process.
Yes, that's for sure. It is hard, and it's if you're not willing to spend weeks, months, and several years on it, then just drop it.
Yeah.
You're a parent of two young kids. They're finally, I think one of them is starting school maybe shortly. How do you balance? Writing is different than a 9-to-5 job, and it's even different than some of these remote or hybrid jobs.
Yeah.
Because you can write someone could say, well, you can write almost any time. Although, your creative might be good at 6 to 7 in the morning, maybe, or maybe at night after the kids go to sleep.
Yeah.
But so how do you balance that? How does that work for you creatively?
Absolutely. So, so when before I got an agent, when I was like, when they were very young, I would write mostly at night. Now I write in the morning. So, you can write anywhere. But for me, like once my kids are awake, like a good half of my brain is just like tuned in to wherever they are, like whatever they might need. Even if like I'm in the basement of my office and they're upstairs, like I hear the pitter patter of little feet and I'm like, oh, like there goes like a chunk of my focus. Right. So I need to write when they're asleep. I get up early. I write. My like dedicated writing time is usually in the morning from like 6:30 to 8 or so. Now because my oldest is in like full-time school now, and my youngest is in like a half-day preschool program, I have more of the time in the during like waking hours to write. But I'm still full-time mom, so my I'm doing grocery shopping, I'm doing laundry, like those that time gets filled with other things too. So I really protect that 6:30 to 8 time. And I can get a lot done in that time, right? If I'm like plotting out my story and I know what the next scene is and I know what I need to happen and what conversations need to happen in that part of the book, I can bang it out, as long as I'm just like keeping that time and like holding it sacred and getting up every morning to do it a little bit at a time. I can chip away at a manuscript.
Do you set up an outline? Do you start with an outline?
I do. Yeah. Some authors can be more kind of like flexible and kind of just discover, where their story takes them. I always outline. I'm a plotter, as they say. So I plot out my story. I made spreadsheets for a living, before I was an author. Now I make them for my like outlines and my revisions. Love a good spreadsheet still. And I need that. Yeah.
Do you create profiles for some of your characters, or do you let them tell you where they go as you're writing?
Yeah, some authors do that and have like a big like story Bible. I don't do that only because I know that it will make me procrastinate. Like I could spend forever building that out and then never actually get to the story. So I kind of I have like a few character details that I use in service of like figuring out how the plot works. And then the rest of it, I kind of build in over the course of revisions as things kind of flesh themselves out. Yeah.
Are you a bit of a procrastinator?
I'm not, but I can get in my head about like a story not being good enough to get started. And I think that's the biggest thing when you're writing, even, for an established author, writing the next thing and like that blank page is always scary. So if I don't just like start, then like I can get in my head and say like, oh, I'll just wait, a few more days. Like just gotta do it. You cannot revise what doesn't exist. So you have to make it first.
That's true. I love that. Do you set goals for yourself, like word counts or time or anything like that?
Yeah, I try, I'm generous with myself because I know that if I'm not careful, I'll burn out and then like that goal won't be hit anyway. Right. So especially when I'm on my own deadlines and not my editor's deadlines, I try to take it easy. I can do 1,000 words a day pretty reliably. And so, that like 3 months later, that's a full book, right? So that's kind of usually my pace. And I do like to kind of backwards plan and think about, okay, by the end of the week, I want to be at this chapter. By the end of the month, I want to be here. That way I just know that I'm on track, right? Or that I need to adjust my plan if I'm falling behind, or, sometimes as you're writing, you realize, oh, like that scene actually belongs somewhere else, or I can like accomplish that in a paragraph instead. So you're always revising, like you're not holding it too tightly, but I like a good plan. It just helps me know where I'm going.
What I know the kids are kind of young, but the oldest, what does she feel about mom being a writer and author?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So
it?
the moment they began to kind of finally get it actually was last February. I sold my my middle grade book, which is like a 9 to 12-year-old reader, kind of like that's like middle grade, like younger than young adult, right? I sold 2 books to Disney. So my first Disney book's coming out in April. But when I told them that it was with Disney, they were like, "Oh, Disney!" Like, we get it. That was amazing. And then actually, like 3 days ago, I was going to we were picking up Mellow Mushroom for dinner. And we went to Johns Creek Books and Gifts, which is like right down the street. And my book is there. And so I was like, oh, our pizza's not ready yet. Let's just go in this bookstore. So my oldest was with me. And I was like, hey, do you see anything that looks familiar? And like her eyes popped out of her head. I think for her, she was like, oh, like mommy writes real books. And they're like in stores. And that was, I think she was like proud, but like also just like over, like it was very cute. But yeah, she couldn't believe it. So that was really cool. Yeah.
That must have been a great feeling.
Very special. I mean, she, like the whole house, my husband's been amazing about this too. Just like the whole house has been like, mommy's book's coming out. So we have like, we just keep track of like whose birthdays come in like the calendar year. And so it's like, oh, like daddy's birthday, mommy's birthday, my youngest, my oldest, whatever. And they slotted my book's birthday in there this year. So they're like, mommy's book's birthday. And then, and then Christmas. And so, so it has been like a big thing we've been building up to. So, yeah.
That's fun. Now, you did mention middle grade book. I don't know. So tell us tell us about that. I didn't know
for sure. So that's coming out April 1st. I have that. I'll show you the cover because it's very cute. So that book is, it's called Kaya Morgan's Crowning Achievement. And it's about let's see, the camera, a Black girl growing up in suburban Atlanta who is competing to be crowned the first Black queen of her local Renaissance Festival's summer camp. And it's really cute. It's like, I love the Renaissance Festival growing up. It was a big part of my my nerd awakening probably. And there's just so much in here about like this girl kind of discovering, where she belongs and what she's interested in, even as society tells her that like maybe those things don't make sense for who she is. And also a bunch of Renaissance fair puns in here. So
that's cool. That's great. And that's a great festival. Anyone that lives in Atlanta should be able to visit that. Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah, I go every year. So that one's coming out in April, and Disney's been great to work with too. It's kind of fun to think about younger kids and readers that are maybe like still looking for, like, don't know that they're readers yet. They're looking for the right book to hook them. And so I think a lot about, the reader looking at this on the shelf and saying, okay, like maybe I can get into books, right? So
So that's a lot different to write than a YA novel.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, did the process take longer? How'd that work? Is it the same agent, or you had to find a different agent?
Same agent. Yeah, same agent, different publisher, obviously. But for this one, it's interesting. I love a good love story. There's no romance in my middle grade, right? So I was like, where's my romance arc? But that's okay. There's a friendship arc, which is really good. And the voice is different. I think younger kids, I think even for a young adult, like in YA, everything is so immediate and urgent, but for middle grade, even more so, right? So like your best friend doesn't invite you to the birthday party, like your world is crashing, like it's crumbling down, right? Yes. And so it was fun to kind of get back into my like 12-year-old headspace, remember what it was like not knowing who I was going to be, like who I was going to end up becoming, right? There's a lot of that uncertainty and like, who am I? Where do I fit in? It was fun to revisit that and kind of provide, one perspective.
That'll be interesting if your kids ever pick that up as they get older.
Yeah.
As they get into middle school.
It's different. Yeah.
Yes. Critiquing mom on, I don't know about this, mom.
Yeah. I can't wait. Yeah. My oldest is still, she loves her like Dog Man and Captain Underpants right now. But I think as she
Captain, oh
gets
my
older,
God, yes.
she's close to getting ready for this. So.
Okay. Yeah, I remember Captain Underpants. My kids bought those too. Um, I mean, actually, because of the school book fairs, right?
Yeah,
Scholastic books and
exactly.
stuff. Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, what's, how far out do you think, do you, I know you're working on this, on the other book.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so how far out do you plan? I mean, or are you just
Yeah.
taking it as you go?
Yeah, I think I take it as I go. I mean, I have a
Okay.
few book ideas in me. So right now I'm actually I need to start drafting. My second Disney book comes out April 2026. So I need to start drafting that. I have the outline ready to go. But so
Okay.
that's kind of where I'm at in terms of my like workload. After that, I have no other contracted books yet. We're on submission with an adult space opera, which I'm holding crossing my fingers for. Um,
Okay.
but I'm
Neat.
excited to have some time in the early part of next year for a book that like is not under contract, like nobody else knows about. Like I just want to like play around again because I think like
Right.
it's amazing to have book deals, but
Hmm.
there's pluses and minuses to everything, and I miss
Sure.
that feeling of like this is just for me. So I'm excited to get back into that.
That's cool. So have we missed anything that you'd like to cover that maybe that I
Uh,
didn't quite get to?
I don't think so. I think that's me.
Okay. Do you want to show us the cover of your new book?
Oh yeah,
Do you have that? Let me
yeah, I
see.
do. Let's see. This is the Dividing Sky, which this cover is absolutely gorgeous.
Excellent.
It gives me like all of
Wow.
the like science fiction, like
Yeah.
romance vibes. Yeah, they
Love
killed
it.
it. It's so
Love it.
pretty. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we've been speaking to Jill Tew, author, first-time author. Well, lots of books out at this point with Disney, and this first novel.
Mhm.
Um, Appreciate you spending time with us. And it's
Yeah.
great to see, Peachtree Corners has a lot going on. And it's good to see, again, I'd love the opportunity to talk to different people from different areas, of different professions, different skill sets. So this was great. Love talking about the talking shop to some degree, although I don't
Yeah.
do writing at published magazines, but
Yeah.
that's about where I am.
It's all connected. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for this and for having the spotlight. I love this city. When we were moving back, it was on top of our list. So we're so
Yeah.
happy to be here.
Great to have you. Hang in there with me for a minute. Just want to sign off a little bit, but I also want to tell everyone EV Remodeling Inc. is our sponsor for these podcasts and for our publications. So check them out. Eli lives here in Peachtree Corners with his family. They do great work from start to finish. So no matter what you're doing, whether it's one room or all the rooms in your house, you should visit them. So evremodelinginc.com is where you can get that info. And if you're listening to this through our website or wherever you're listening, I'll have links in the show notes. So this way you can find more about Jill's books and about the Disney book as well. We'll have that link as well. So thank you all for being with us.